Hello, everyone, and welcome to our D&A webinar. I'm Jerry Durant, your D&A host for today, and I'd like to thank you for joining us, first of all. Next, I'd like to introduce you to my friend Pete Graychuk and his Global Pay teammates. Pete will show you how integrated payment solutions can benefit your business. So take it away, Pete.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you, everyone, for joining. Today we're going to talk about what's often referred to as AR automation. I tend to refer to it as AR avoidance, and maybe that'll become apparent as I go through our presentation here. There's two elements to our solution. There is integrated payment processing within Sage, and that's a product we call PayFabric. And there is also a customer portal, which is an online portal that allows your customers to go on and self-serve and pay their accounts online and that type of thing. And we'll take a look at both of those things. So first of all, what are some of the challenges that we hear from our customers that come to us asking for solutions like this? And there's a bunch of stuff that comes into play here. First of all, the collection of payments from your customers can be a very labor-intensive and time-consuming process. And if you're going by kind of old methodologies where you're emailing out invoices and waiting for checks to come in the mail, there's all those delays in getting that cash into your bank so that you can put it to use in the business. And if you are using credit card payments in some way, shape, or form, you want to make sure that those are all in a PCI compliant manner and fully secure, because there is liability there if you're not doing things in a PCI compliant manner. So these are all the kind of things that you need to consider when you start talking about introducing an AR automation process into your company. So our PayFabric product, number one, is integrated or embedded directly inside of Sage, so it allows you to process those payments within Sage and have it automatically reconcile against the proper invoices, customers, banks, all that stuff. At the same time, on the customer-facing portal side of things, it also is integrated there so that any payments that are affected on that portal, again, will automatically end up in Sage so that there's nothing for your staff to do outside of, if you're in Sage 300, post a batch. So those types of things. So it really does streamline that operation. If you think about how much time it takes you to go through that whole process of contacting a customer, getting the payment details, entering that into possibly a virtual terminal, perhaps a PIN pad, getting the post-back information, taking that detail, putting it into a receipt inside of Sage, and then posting that. We're probably talking 10 to 15 minutes for every time you do that. If you can put that into the hands of your customers and have the other systems automatically take care of that, you're saving yourself a ton of time. So biggest benefits that our customers realize here is, number one, when you make it easy for them to pay, they will pay you more quickly. That means you get that money into your doors faster. You can put it to work in the business or in your organization. And again, we spoke about this, reducing all that manual labor. And anytime you introduce a human element into that equation, you introduce the opportunity for a possible mistake to be made. Transcription error, posted to the wrong thing, all of this stuff is a potential that could happen and further complicate things and slow things down and have a bad customer experience and all that stuff. It's a potential possibility when you have a disconnected system that's not automated. And when you get that cash into your system and things are properly reconciled in the system, that means that you can rely on that data in your system to make decisions more quickly for the organization. So the key features of our system include things like credit card or e-check processing in Canada. That would be an EFT transaction, wallet management, and that comes along with the PCI compliant payment storage. These are encrypted card tokens, as they're referred to, that you can store within Sage. They can be stored on the customer portal so that when your customers come in to make a payment, they don't have to enter their card or payment details every time. Inside of Sage, you can also draw on that and not enter those card details every time. If your customers have given you the approval to go ahead and process their invoices as they come due, you just go ahead and do it. The self-serve options, again, offloads that whole customer service burden from your staff, puts it in the hands of your customers, and frankly, they want it. They want to be able to self-serve. They want to be able to look at their account anytime they want, any time of the day or night. You don't have to be open for them to check out their account balances, to pay their invoices. There's even order entry capabilities here as well. Now, North49 is part of the Global Payments family of companies. Global Payments is one of, if not the biggest payment processor in the world. That gives us an incredible ability to provide you with the lowest rates on your processing fees. So something we can certainly explore with you. And all of our systems that I spoke about are integrated directly into Sage so that you don't have to worry about taking care of any of that. So it's automation and it's integration. That's what's making this thing all work for you. So this is the North49 customer portal, and I will show this to you live so you can see this in action and what it means to your customers and how easy and intuitive it is for them to go online and to do this. And there's a bunch of things that they can do here, and we'll talk about that very specifically when I show that to you. There's also the ability we have, and I'll show this to you as well, click to pay, where you can embed a link right on that invoice document, have them click that, and it'll take them to a screen to allow them to pay that invoice document. And we'll talk more about that as well. So if you're going through the process of printing, folding, stuffing, stamping, mailing invoices, this is another way where you can save time and money. You get rid of the paper, you get rid of the postage, you get rid of all the time it takes you to do all that. Get it out by email, embed a link on that email document, and you're going to reduce your day sales outstanding fairly dramatically by doing just that. There's a whole bunch of different document types that we can expose to you. And again, I'll show this to you live within Sage. I will do a presentation on Sage 300, but I don't know if anyone's interested, but we also integrate into Sage Intacct if that's of interest to anybody. There's also an order entry component to the portal. Now, this doesn't get used quite as much as the rest of the features within the customer portal, but it is a great way for folks to do things like, I don't know, inventory replenishment or things of that nature. I wouldn't characterize it as a web store, but it does give folks the ability to place orders online and have them end up directly inside of Sage, either on hold or ready to fulfill. We do find a lot of our customers use their internal staff to use this capability so that they can do things on behalf of a customer. And in the case of Sage 300, the customer portal does consume a single Sage user license, but you could have 50 staff and 1,000 customers using this and ever only consume that one Sage user license. So it's a nice way to potentially avoid having to add on a bunch of Sage user licenses if the portal does the things that you need those specific staff members to do. So something to keep in mind. And we do seamlessly integrate into Sage, as I spoke about before. This is a two-way live read and feed of data to and from Sage. So the portal itself has no data. When somebody clicks on something that says, show this to me, we serve it up right then at that point in time and let them see that document. And again, we're going to see this in action here in just a moment when I get to the next screen. So here it is. Let me just move away here and get things rolling. So the first thing that I typically will start with is the click to pay. So I've mocked up something here on this document to, let's say it's an invoice. It could be an invoice. It's just a Word doc that I've mocked up the link in here. And in fact, you could put that link in anything. But the beauty of this is if you're doing it right from Sage, you can have that link embedded straight on that invoice document. And as you hover on that, you can see what we're pointing to. So first of all, it's the URL. And that URL is going to be your domain. It's not going to be ours like it shows here. It's going to be, I don't know, portal.mydomain.com or customer.mydomain.com, something like that, right? Point is, it's your domain, so your customers are comfortable that they're dealing with you and not some phishing scam. The next thing we do is we feed it the customer number, which is their AR account number, and the document number. In this case, it's that invoice number. And once I click on that, it's going to pop up a screen and it's going to allow me to pay. So the first thing that happens, we input, first of all, the customer number, the invoice number. We now, that slight delay you saw there, that was us running out to Sage 300, checking, is that an invoice for that customer and is it still open to pay? And if all those things are true, we fill in the customer number, the invoice date, and the outstanding, whatever's left owing on that invoice document. So that was a live read of data back and forth just to make sure this was okay. And if these things weren't true, we'd get a message here saying, sorry, We can't do that right now. Please try again later, or check your invoice number or your account number or something of that nature, but we wouldn't allow them to proceed. So in my case, I'm going to make that payment. So I hit that pay invoice button. What happens now is we pop up what's called a hosted page. We have now temporarily left the customer portal software and entered the payment processing software. This is PayFabric here, right? So the reason we do that is because it's to avoid PCI compliance issues on the portal. This is now in the secure payment credit card system where we maintain all the PCI compliance and security. All I have to do is enter my card details, and then I hit that pay button. What happens when I hit that pay button is we send this transaction off to us, to PayFabric, to our payment processing software, and then it comes back with a response. And in this case, it says it was successful, and here is your on-screen receipt. Now, as a customer, I can print that receipt. As the merchant, being you guys, you can also optionally send an email with all this information to the email address that sits on that customer's AR account. So they can get it this way. They can also get it by email. That's your option. Internally, you also will get, or can get, if you choose to use this, notifications. You can get notifications by email, by Slack, or by Microsoft Teams. So if you happen to be using either of those two products, you can be notified instantly that this customer paid this invoice by this payment method for this much money. So if you happen to be going through a collection proceeding with somebody, you get notified instantly. So anybody who's on that team or that channel or on that distribution list in email will be notified that this happened. At the same time, we take this post back, as it's called, from the processor, and we append it directly into a Sage 300 AR receipt batch. Now, the only thing left for you to do at that point is post that batch. Now, we will look for an open batch that's there, in this case, for credit card processing. And if it's open and it's not marked as ready to post, we will append to that batch. If we don't find one like that, we're going to open a new batch, and we're going to add this line into that batch so that you can control ultimately when you mark those batches as ready to post or you post them, that's going to control which ones we're going to add it to. Yeah, so that's click to pay. I think I covered everything here. So, I should also mention as well, let me get into the full-on portal here. So let me just click on this. This is what the login screen looks like to the customer portal. Now, some things on here you control. You control this up here. This is an image file. You point us to that image file on the admin side of the portal, and that's what we'll put there. There's quite a bit of real estate here. So if you've got your logo, maybe you've got some messaging, you want to change that seasonally, what have you, that's up to you. You also control this. That's your welcome message to your customers. Again, simple text input in the back end, and we'll put it there, and you also control that. So that's what makes that uniquely yours, is those changes. You also have the ability to do this in French if you choose to do so, and we will change everything that we are in control of. Now, of course, you control that, so whatever language you put that in, that's what's going to appear there and here. But anything we control, we're going to change. And you can, there's a setting in the back end. If you want this to be the default, you can. If you would prefer the customer did it, we will attempt to drop a cookie onto their site, onto their machine, if they accept cookies, and it'll display that next time they log in, so they don't have to keep switching that toggle there. So those are the things that you control here. For customers to get registered to use this, there's a couple of different ways this can happen. So number one, if you want to control it completely, you can. And again, this is on the admin side, and I can pop in there and show you a few things in there as well, but you would set them up and give them authorization to have access if you want to. If that's what you want to do, that's entirely within your control. But that does represent the most amount of work for you or your staff. Another way to do this is to let your customers self-register. So they would have this register screen here. They would enter a username. This could be whatever they want. You can have more than one user for any one AR customer. So there's a single AR customer, but there can be multiple users for that one customer. We do ask them a verification question here. And the reason we do that is because there's an option to give them immediate access to the account if they answer that question correctly. And there's 5 different questions relative to the AR account that you can choose to ask them, one of those 5. And if they answer it correctly, you can opt to give them immediate access. If you do that, you also have the option to send an email, and it's again to that AR email address, and let them know that you've given this user access to their account. And for that reason, or for in that instance or any other instance where that customer wants to shut down a specific user, they let you know it's the mouse click and you can shut that user down, and I can show you that again in the back end as well. One other option at this point, rather than giving them immediate access, is it can wait on the admin side, and then you would authorize them individually to get access to the portal or not. So it's either you do it all, they do it all, or you do the authorization once they've registered. So that's how your customers will get set up on the portal itself. There is one other way that they could pay an invoice here without logging in, and that's similar to that click to pay. They would just enter their customer number, their invoice number. They'll hit check invoice. We'll do that same stuff that we spoke about on the click to pay. We'll check, make sure it's there, it's open to pay and all that good stuff, and allow them to pay it that way. So anybody who's challenged remembering passwords or doesn't use any password managers, then that's one way for them to do it. Once they log in, a couple of things can happen, and these are options. I'm telling you what the options are. You choose to use them or not, entirely up to you. So the first thing that might happen, if you choose to deploy this, is you can have a message pop up for that specific user, AR customer, on that account. And so this is a message between us and Dr. Dan, and that's maintained here inside of Sage. Here's my Sage. Hang on a second here. There we go. Wake up, Sage. Let's try that again. Oh, here we go. Sorry, I was in the wrong place. So here's where that's. Sorry. Sage decided they wanted to reload. Give me a second here. Here we go. So in accounts receivable, and this is customer 1600. We've got a comment type called web. And that's what this guy was right here. This is the message that we saw pop up on the customer portal here, right? So once Dr. Dan sees this and he clicks OK, back there again, oops, sorry. You'll see we've changed it to web acknowledge. So those two comment types are right there. So we know that Dr. Dan has seen this. So you can keep a sort of a running string of communications here with that specific customer. So again, that's between you specifically and that customer, that one customer. The second thing that popped up here, we call this a broadcast, and this goes to everybody that logs in. So it typically is something like a policy change, office hour change, holiday times, whatever you need everybody to know about. They'll do so from here, and that's maintained on the admin side again. Once they click OK, it goes away, it doesn't keep popping up to bother them. So the customer portal itself is a subscription-based model. In the case of Sage 300, it's referred to as a Sage endorsed product. So Sage sells it just like they sell their regular products. So the folks at D&A would make the acquisition on your behalf. So this is a fully, with all the options on this particular instance. So there are 3 instances here, or 3 levels of subscription. The first one, baseline, you have to have this regardless, would be the account activity, view transactions, view orders, and the contact us. That's the baseline. You have to have that as a minimum. First optional add-on would be the online payments, and that would include the pay account, the prepayment, and the managed credit cards. And the third optional add-on is the order entry. And we'll have a quick look at each of these things just so you know what they're all about. So depending upon what you subscribe to, those icons will appear here, but you also have more granular control if you want to turn certain functions on or off. Let's say you subscribe to everything, but you didn't want to do prepayments, you just turn that part off. So that's pretty easy. The account activity really just shows you summary level information about your account. Now I'm logged in as a customer here, right? So here's my last few payments, here's my last few invoices, my outstanding balance, and so forth. So basic information about my account. Where the interesting stuff happens is, now remember, we don't have any data. We're reading this live from Sage. So when I clicked on that view transactions, we actually ran out to Sage, fetched that data and brought it back onto the screen here. So we're displaying all these different transaction types from Sage. Now you have the option to turn these on and off. If there's certain things you just don't want to display or don't use at all, you turn them off, they don't show up here. But from a customer perspective, I have the ability to filter that list down to only those document types that I want to look at. I just want to see my invoices. I just want to see my open invoices, which is also going to show up on the pay account line as well. If you only want to see the payments that you've made, known as a receipt in Sage, so nothing there at the moment. Oh, sorry, that says open. So here's all the payments I've made historically. So from a customer perspective, I can look at all of this stuff. Now we look at both accounts receivable invoices, we look at order entry invoices. So as I click on these, I can get a drill down into what that document is. Now we do have a standard layout that we ship with, right? So here's a detailed accounts receivable invoice, and we do indicate this is a web copy. So if it doesn't look identical to the one that you typically would email out of Sage, that will be their clue as to why that is, because it came from the portal. But they do have the ability to reprint this, to save it as a PDF, to do whatever they need to do. And again, that's going to be your logo or whatever image you told us to put up in that upper left area. So that was an accounts receivable invoice. Here's an order entry invoice. You can see there's a lot more detail on this one. And then similarly, if I want to reprint that or save it to a PDF, I can do so from here as well. And that holds true for any document that sits on this screen here. I would say that 90+% of the customers that choose to adopt the portal will do so to allow their customers to pay them online. And so that's what this allows them to do. This exposes all of the open invoice documents in the system that I can pay. You'll notice that this is an editable field. It doesn't have to be. You control that. You can turn it on and off. Sometimes folks say, look, I just want you to pay the invoice or not. I don't want you to short pay me by 10 cents, so I got a reconciliation issue. If we've got an issue with an invoice, let's settle the dispute first and then either pay it or don't. But entirely up to you, whether you turn that on or off. So when I hit that make payment button, it now exposes some other options here. So number one, we spoke about storing those encrypted card tokens. That's just showing me as a customer that I have chosen to store this card token. Now, if I hit make payment, it's going to just do all that transactional stuff without me having to enter the card details again. Gets post back, it gets it into Sage, all the notifications go out if you decided to turn those on, and it's done. And they'll get their on-screen receipt, plus you can email them a receipt if you choose to do that. If they want to do a different card and do one-time use, they'll just click that, not click the save button and hit the make payment button. This is going to expose, again, that Pay Fabric screen, allowing them to enter their card details. The same would hold true if they're doing an EFT transaction. They would just choose the e-check option. E-check or ACH option here, and that would just allow them to enter their credit card details, their bank account details that you're probably familiar with if you've done this at all. So similar process, just slightly different way you deal with it. And again, all the payments end up in the appropriate place inside of Sage automatically, so you don't have to worry about the reconciliation. It's essentially done for you. In the Sage 300 world, there are 3 different ways that you can accept an event, or I guess they call it an unallocated cash payment. And in fact, they call it an advance payment. So first of all, they can just send you money. They can send you money. They'll tell you why they're sending you money. It just sits on their account waiting for you to apply it to something at some point in the future. That's one way. That's the only way we can do it inside of Sage Intacct. Sage 300, we can also accept a prepayment on an order. And that's going to sit right on that order so that when you go to fulfill that order, you know you've got the funds already, so you're good to ship. We can do it on a quote as well. A little bit different treatment here because the quote doesn't have that same field as the order entry screen does. So we put it in a reference field. That way you know you've got that money so that when you go ahead and turn that into an order, you can do all the appropriate stuff to make that flow through. So that's all the prepayment options. Manage credit cards. So this really just exposes all the stored card tokens that customer has chosen to have on file. The only thing they can really do here is either delete it or change what the default is. It's just informational more than anything. There's the order entry side of things as well. So we're looking at order entry here, and we do support all the different order types that sit inside of Sage Intacct, or sorry, Sage 300. And you can also look at this either by the order or by the item. So this is kind of like, this is all the stuff, all the products or items I'm still waiting for you to ship to me and the orders they live on. And here's all the orders that I have outstanding with you. And here are the line items on those orders that I'm waiting for. So you can see there's different statuses in here as well, right? So the status of this one saying on hold. So an order has been placed, and perhaps it was placed through our order entry component here, but we wanted to make sure that we had some staff's eyes on it before we actually put it into fulfillment to make sure somebody didn't do something foolish like, I don't know, entered 100 when they meant 10 or what have you. So that's why it's sitting there on hold. But whatever, for whatever reason, we're reading this live out of Sage. So whatever status we can glean by looking at the state of that order in Sage, we're going to put in here. So here's one that we know has already been invoiced. When you see something like that's happened and you've got this icon here, we're actually going to pop up another window here, and it's going to show you the invoice document that's on. And if I want to click on that, it's going to give me that same invoice display that we looked at before. So that's what that does. When we look at quotes, there's some interesting stuff you can do with quotes. So we've got two statuses here on the quote. One is sitting in approved and one is sitting in wait approval. And this might work in conjunction with our order entry component here, where people can submit for a quote or an order. Now you probably do one or the other, probably not both of these, but let's say you were allowing your customers to request a quote. It might, again, depending upon how you want this to work, end up as waiting approval. So it doesn't just go straight into the system. You're waiting for somebody to look at it, make sure everything's appropriate on it, and then you'll approve it internally. Once that hits the approved status, like this one is, that icon there allows them to turn it into an active order by hitting that confirm button. And that will turn that quote into an active order ready to fulfill inside of Sage. So there's a couple of ways you might use that. Maybe you'll have your staff internally create these quotes and it'll sit here in an approved status. The customer looks at it, says, yep, like what I see, let's just make that an order. Or they have submitted for the quote, maybe through our order entry form. Someone has to review it, someone approves it, then it hits the approved status, then they can turn it into an order. So if you happen to be using any of that stuff, that's what you can use that for. The order entry side of things is, so I've logged in here as a customer. So from this, I know what my ship to locations are. This is Sage 300, or I can add a new one if I'd like to. I can provide shipping instructions. I can provide a PO number, request the delivery date, and some of these things you can turn on and off as well. But remember, we don't have any data. So we have to query Sage to find out what it is they're after. So as a customer, as a user, I need to type in at least 3 characters. And we're going to search multiple fields to find a match for those 3 characters. We're going to search the item number. We're going to search the item description. We're going to search in Sage 300. There's those 4 additional item information lines that live in inventory control. We'll search that. If you're talking about Intacct, there is a web description field. We'll search that. In Sage 300, there's a customer item number field. So if you're maintaining that, we'll search that field as well. So in my situation, I want to look for, let's say, a calculator. So I type in 3 characters. I either hit the enter key or I hit the finder. And now we just run out to Sage and brought back everything that satisfied what I typed. And as I click that, it's going to add it to the line. When there's multiple units of measure, I can choose the unit of measure that I want to buy in. So that's a simple way. If somebody's very familiar with what it is they want to buy. Let's say they're just doing a stock replenishment, and the guy who's doing the order or the woman who's doing the order, either by the item number or the description, they can do this entirely keyboard driven and just pound an order in there just like they were entering it in the Sage. Now, if they're not entirely familiar with what it is they wanted to get, or let's say there's a new item on there, if you invoke this, and that's an option for you to turn that on and off, and they click that show item details, now when they select the item they want to look at, I always have to remember which one's got the What pops up now is a secondary screen that shows them images, potentially, if you want to store them. And if there's multiple, they'll have a scroll that they can go through and see multiples. I spoke about the additional item information details. That's where it's going to display here. So this just gives them a bit of reassurance that they're buying the right thing. And they can add that to their order. And I mentioned a minute ago that you can either place this as an order and it can go in on hold inside of Sage, or you can place it as a quote. I don't know that you would ever have both of these active in here. You'd probably do one or the other, but that's entirely up to you. So let's say I wanted to place that order. It's going to go straight into Sage. We've set this up so it's going to go in on hold, but as soon as that's in Sage, I can go in and I can look at that within the portal and see that order. So that is now, we just read that live back out of Sage. As it went in, it calculated all the taxes. If there's any shipping costs or anything like that, they would then be on that order. So that order is now sitting inside of Sage. In our situation, I think it's on hold, but let's just have a look here under view orders. Yeah, it's in there on hold. So we've got it set up in the system like that. You could have it automatically go to fulfill if you wanted to do that. So that's the order entry side of things. So incidentally, we have created this or made this work so that any device they happen to be working on, this is going to work just as well as it would if you were on a full-on desktop monitor. So we've reformatted the screen completely, right? So if I got this down a little bit smaller, you can see we actually changed the menu to that fold-out menu. The order entry component is consistent on the bottom here to add the line items. So we didn't just squash the screen down, we actually reformatted the screen so it's appropriate for the device they happen to be using. So that's the customer facing side. And hopefully I've demonstrated that it's a pretty intuitive thing to use, doesn't require training for them to figure out how to use it, should be fairly straightforward. To give you a quick look at the back end, if anyone has questions as we go along, pop them into the chat. I think somebody will notify me that there's a question that I can answer, but there will be some time at the end as well that we've allocated for questions. So to give you a look at what your login and your access looks like, this is basically what it is. You have the same starting point, but then your view is quite a bit different. So it just takes a second for this to load. The first thing you see is a bit of a dashboard. So it tells you how many payments you're taking on the portal, if you're taking payments, how many customers are using the portal, and if there's any outstanding payments that have not been inserted into Sage yet. So here's the stuff I just did today. This is month to date, year to date, last year, how many payments have I made? This is how many of my customers are using it. And if you recall, I said you can have more than one user on any one AR account. So the AR account is customer, and the users is the number of people accessing those AR accounts. So that's typically a bigger number, than that one. This just alerts me if I've taken a payment but was not able to insert that payment into Sage. And it's a pretty rare occurrence that that would happen. In the Sage 300 world, we have a component we call Connect. It's a web service, sits on your Sage server, and it essentially governs the communication back and forth. So when we send in a question from the portal, it interrogates Sage through that user license and sends us back the answer. If that gets turned off, we can't connect. And so that's the only instance where this would probably have a number in it. And pretty rare if you think about it, because we had to be connected to initiate the payment process, but somehow during that, when we sent the payment out to the payment gateway and got it back again, we got disconnected. Maybe it was a power outage, doing a backup, doing an upgrade, something happened, got turned off. Simple fix, you turn Connect back on, press the button, hit process, and we'll insert that payment. So anyway, it's just more informational than anything. This is that broadcast message we talked about. Here's where you control that, pretty straightforward, straight text input. If you want to be the one to add those users in here, here's how you will do it. And there's three types of users. There's the user we just spoke about. There is the merchant, which is what we're looking at right now. And there's salesperson. Now I talked about staff members being able to use the portal to do things for customers. Anything a customer could do, you could have a staff member do on their behalf. The only difference between what we call the salesperson access and the user access is we ask them one question up front: what customer? and they can look by their customer number or the customer name and find them, and then just toggle between different customers just by changing the customer name. So those 3 types. In that situation where I mentioned that the customer got in touch with you and said, shut this user down, there's the button right there. You shut them down, that user is no longer having access to that portal. And if you did the situation whereby you let them self-register, but you wanted to be the one that granted them access, you just looked for everybody that said needs approval, and this status here that says needs approval, they would all show up here that you could go through them and authorize them to have access or not authorize them, whatever the case may be. This part here, this tracks every payment that has been made or has been attempted to have been made or started but not finished through the portal itself. There's the one I did through Click to Pay. There's the 2 I started but didn't finish as I was showing you the stored cards and the ACH or the EFT stuff. I didn't finish them, and this tells me so. This tells me that it's been finished, and that switch tells me it's been inserted into Sage. So this shows you everything that has happened on the portal itself. Now, PayFabric, if you're doing stuff inside of Sage 300, has its own merchant portal where you can log in and get everything that's happening either through Sage or through the portal itself. It'll all be there. This is strictly portal. Lots of good filter capabilities as well, so you can always find the transaction in here by any of these filter criteria. Now, a few things just to point out back here. If you want to shut your portal on and off, you can right there. In Sage 300, if you want to limit access to specific customers, there is I believe it's a checkbox on the AR record that says allow web store shopping. If you want to use that flag, check that on, and then turn this switch on. We will only allow those customers with that checked on to have access to the portal. These are the 5 skill testing questions I spoke about. You can choose any one of these as the question that they must answer correctly in order to be given immediate access to that portal. But this is where you can turn that self-registration and auto approval on and off as well. And again, that's just the image file you point us to that's going to show up here. This is your address information. Here's your welcome message. Simple text input, very easy to make changes to that should you need to. I spoke about you being able to control which of the capabilities are there. Here's where you're going to turn that stuff on and off. Simple checkbox, hit the save button, and that's going to change those for you. I also spoke about being able to limit which of the document types will appear on that list when I looked at view transactions. Here's where you turn that stuff on and off as well. So that's just going to limit what they can see or what you want them to see. And that's just where you tell us what the subdomain is you want your portal to be that customers will be directed to. Most of this stuff is strictly setup information. You don't need to worry about it. Our team will get it set up for you, all your payment processing credentials, the Connect setup going into your Sage. We deal with all of that for you, but we will need your assistance, of course, to do that. The notifications, there's a few interesting things here. So we spoke about getting notified internally if someone makes a payment. That's what this is all about. I want to be notified, say if a new user registers, if I got a payment or somebody didn't complete a transaction. Well, who do I tell and how do I tell them? By what method? It's very easy to set these things up. We have full instructions on how to do this. I spoke about that Connect component for Sage 300 that sits on your Sage server. So if that gets turned off and we try to connect and we can't, we need to send a message to somebody on your site to say, please go turn on Connect again. And who is that and how do we tell them? And there's some order entry information here as well. If somebody places an order online, you can be notified, your sales staff can be notified, or your fulfillment staff can be notified instantaneously, either by email, by Slack, or by Teams. And the customer down here can also get notified of an order. They can get an order confirmation sent to them by email. They'll also get it on screen. New user we spoke about, and payment, I think we spoke about that as well. On this contact us, that was an icon on that very front page. Who does that go to internally for response and what you want the immediate response to be? So pretty simple stuff, easy to set up. And the only other thing is a bunch of order entry settings in here that will be triggered. I don't go into this in any great detail. Again, our team is going to work with you to figure out how you want all this stuff to work. So you don't have to worry about this. And frankly, this whole back end here is not something you have to go into and mess around with. Once it gets configured properly, and as long as we have access and Sage 300, that user license and connect is running, it's all good. It'll just do what it does, and you don't have to worry too much about it unless you get a notification that we can't connect. But obviously, you have the ability to pop in here at any time you want and deal with these things. Anyway, that's the customer portal side of things. There is also the PayFabric side of things. And so PayFabric exists within Sage 300 as an embedded or integrated payment processing solution. So most of this stuff we deal with for you. We'll set up the gateways, we'll do all the PayFabric setup so you don't have to worry about it. Some things that you might have some interaction with would be the PayFabric wallet. Now this is where your customers or you will store these encrypted card tokens on behalf of your customers. So here's one we got. Again, this is Dr. Dan again. We've got a stored ACH token in here for and a stored credit card token. And you got these as set as the defaults. You can add them, you can edit them. If you want to add a new credit card in here, it's a kind of similar screen set up called PayFabric. PayFabric up here, you know, this is one of our screens embedded right into Sage, and they're just going to enter that information and save it. Or sorry, you're going to enter that information in here and save it. So you have that to use, in future for that customer. There's also a transactions screen in here that basically indicates all of the PayFabric transactions that have gone on. So if you've got some in here that you want to capture, you can just multi-select them and hit that capture button to capture those pre-auths that are in the system for them. But you can also do this directly from the Sage screens in here as well. So we've got our screens inside of both accounts receivable and in order entry. So you'll notice we've got our own invoice entry screen and our own receipt entry screen. You would use these in place of the Sage screens. And the reason we do that is because we've got our buttons embedded on these screens. So if I look at the PayFabric, not sure I click that. If I look on that PayFabric invoice entry screen, we'll see the PayFabric button. Let me just find a document here that's got PayFabric up on it. I think it's 56. I got to get, oh, hang on, there was one. Back up. So you can see when I've got a document in here that PayFabric can do something with, the PayFabric button will light up, right? So in this case, when I hit that PayFabric button, it's going to pop up again the PayFabric transaction screen and allow me, in this case, to do a full payment transaction. So I'll select the payment type that I want to do, be it ACH or credit card, and these are codes that will get set up for you as well. These are set up in Sage. I've got a stored card token on there. I hit that process button, and it's going to run out, collect that money, and settle that transaction in Sage like we spoke about through the click to pay. So all that stuff happens directly from within Sage. We do the same thing on the PayFabric receipts in a very similar fashion. So again, we'll just look for a receipt here that we can take some action on. Here's one. Hang on, get something. Here we go. Nope. Something with some line items on here. I know I got one because I found it earlier. Just gotta find it again. Sorry. This is the one that was up to 56, I believe. There it is. Okay. So now we've got a transaction in here that I can now do, again, a PayFabric transaction on to capture those funds. And we do sale transactions in accounts receivable because typically we're just going straight to a payment processing transaction here. And again, I'll click on the payment method I want to do, hit that process button, and it's going to complete that transaction for me on that receipt. We do the same thing inside of order entry. So similarly, we've got our own screens in here, the PayFabric order entry and the PayFabric shipment entry. So very similarly that you saw us do inside of the accounts receivable side of things, we can do the same thing with an order entry order. So on this one, you can see we have got a pre-auth amount here, an authorized amount. So when we placed that order, we did a pre-authorization, right? We went through this process and did the process, and it actually took that pre-authorization, which says the credit card company says, yes, we've reserved this money for you for this order. so that when you go to ship that order, you do a capture, and that's going to capture those funds for you automatically on that order itself. And the same thing holds true when we do so through shipment entry, if that's where you do. So it depends on how you're doing your process in Sage, right? You either do it from the order entry screen or you do it from the shipment entry screen. So very similarly, you're going to have similar functionality here. There's a pay fabric button to light up for me. Anyway, I've got to go a ways down the list here to find one. Regardless, I don't want to spend a lot of time wasting your time going through that, but it's exactly the same process we just went through for order entry. All the stuff, it's very similar. Screens are similar, process is similar. It's just a matter of how you do your processing in Sage as to which of these screens is most appropriate for you to use to deal with your process. With that, I think that pretty much concludes what I wanted to speak about on that side of things. So, do we have any questions? Anything pop through in the chat here, so I'll give it a couple of minutes. But anyway, I'll tell you a little bit about North49. So we've been around in the Sage world for, well, forever, almost as long as Sage has been a product, going back to the ACPAC Plus days, and of course now working with Sage 300 and Sage Intacct. We have our customer portal. We have Webtelligence, which is our integrated web store to Sage 300. We also work with Sage Intacct, of course, with a customer portal. We were acquired by Global Payments a couple of years ago, so we're now part of a much bigger organization, brings a lot more resources to bear on our products and services, so we can be a great company or a great service provider for you, because we've got both the software and the processing side of things, so that we can be that full service shop for you, provide great rates, great service, all of that stuff, one-stop shop, one throat to choke, as they say. Last chance for questions for anybody. Not seeing anything pop up here. So next steps. So Jerry, who opened up the show for us, he is your contact, and he will get you routed to the appropriate people if you're interested in learning more or moving forward for this. One thing that we do ask, if you want to do something with us, is we do need to get you set up with a merchant account through Global Payments. And to do that, we like to analyze your past few statements that you got from your current processor, and then provide you with an analysis and a quote for our services. And 99.9% of the time, we save you money on your processing. And sometimes we save you enough money to actually pay for the subscription for the customer portal. So it should be a net zero gain for you. Plus, you're saving all that time and all that effort and providing great customer service. So if you have questions, or if you want us to speak specifically about your situation, get in touch with Jerry. He'll get in touch with us, and we will get you what you need. And with that, unless there are any final questions, I'll turn it back to Jerry.
Thanks, Pete. What a great demo. It's provided a really good look at how the customer portal features can really help. As Pete mentioned, please reach out to me if you want to have a, basically, I was going to say a private meeting with Pete, have a contact with Pete and learn more about how we can benefit your business. It's really, that's really all I had to say. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Pete and team. Really appreciate the presentation. It was great, and look forward to working with you in the future.
All right, thank you, Jerry, and thank you all for joining us.
Bye, everyone.